I would say I've written extensively about it in this book, Politics According to the Bible, and there is a chapter on issues related to protection of life, capital punishment, and there's a chapter on war and military defense. And I'm actually, as soon as I get done with this interview, Brandan, I'm off to Phoenix Seminary to teach for 2 hours, 1 hour on capital punishment and 1 on just war theory. But yes, God commands us not to murder, certainly in the Ten Commandments, but that Hebrew verb, ratzach, is never used of killing in war. And God commanded the Israelites to go to war many times in the Old Testament, but that verb, ratzach, was never used. And other words were used to describe that. So the ESV, I think, where I was on the committee and I remember the translation of that verse, the discussion, I think we did rightly, and most modern translations have done this, to translate it, you shall not murder. Now, capital punishment and killing in war are in a different category, and I think in Genesis 9, 5, and 6, God told Noah at the refounding of human society after the flood, whoever sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God he made man. Man is the pinnacle of God's creation, and so valuable that the crime of murdering another human being is so horrible, so heinous, that God says the only punishment suitable for that willful murder of another person is the murderer loses his own life. And Romans 13:4, I believe, supports that, where Romans 13:4 says the civil authority, the government official, is the servant of God to execute his wrath on the wrongdoer, and he does not bear the sword in vain. The sword was an instrument of execution in the first century, and so to bear the sword was an image of having the authority to carry out the death penalty. Paul says this is not in vain. It's out of responsibility to God. It's doing this as a servant of God, because we don't have the right to take life, but God has the right to take life. He's the creator and he's the judge, and he delegates that authority to human government in Romans 13 and in Genesis 9, 5, and 6. So yes, I do think that that capital punishment was established by God in Genesis 9. That's not the Old Covenant. That's not the nation of Israel. That's human civilization. We don't have the call of Abraham until Genesis 12. And so I think it applies to all human society. Romans 13 backs that up with regard to the Roman Empire, not the nation of Israel again. So yes, I support the idea of the capital punishment. And as far as turn the other cheek, I have a long discussion of that in this book, Politics According to the Bible. I think it means that we are not to take personal vengeance on our enemies or return an insult. It says if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And I'm right-handed, and Brandan, I see you here on Skype, and if I were to I wouldn't do this, but if I were to slap you on the right cheek with my right hand, I would have to use a backhanded slap. And the Greek term there, translated slap, just does mean that. It means a slap. It's not an attack to kill somebody. It's an insult. It's like somebody shoving you and trying to goad you into escalating the fight. And Jesus said, no, don't do that. Don't take an insult or a slight offense and try to take revenge for it and let it escalate. But that doesn't prevent self-defense, which is another topic, to keep ourselves from being harmed. And it doesn't prevent that's an address to individuals. It isn't the verse talking about the authority of government. Romans 13 talks about the authority of civil government, and that verse says, I think quite clearly, that capital punishment is justified. As far as just war, it's the fundamental responsibility of the government in Romans 13 and 1 Peter 2 to punish those who do wrong and to reward those who do right. And to punish those who do wrong is to be God's servant for our good. It's to protect us. That's a fundamental responsibility of government. The United States Constitution in the preamble got it right, where it said to provide for the common defense. That was one of the purposes, and ensure domestic tranquility. That's peace at home. So yes, if a nation is attacked, I think it would be morally wrong for Christians not to support that effort, even by serving in the military if called to do so. So I don't agree with pacifism at all. And again, I've interacted with Glenn Stassen and David Gushee, and they're kingdom ethics book in my book Politics According to the Bible, but I just think their interpretation of Scripture is not satisfactory and not persuasive.